What happens when the one person you trusted most takes everything you built and throws you out like a stranger? She didn't just replace me. She made it personal. My own sister, the new CEO, thought she was untouchable. But power makes people sloppy. And I knew exactly where to strike, without ever raising my voice. My name is Brian Whitaker, and growing up, it was clear who wore the crown in our family. My sister, Victoria. From ballet recitals to debate championships, she was the star. Our parents couldn't stop talking about her achievements, framing every certificate she brought home like a Picasso. Me. I was the quiet one. I didn't need the spotlight, I just needed the work to matter. While Victoria collected praise, I collected skills. I stayed late in the kitchen to help Dad run numbers for the hotel, watched how Mom negotiated with suppliers, learned how things actually worked. But no one applauded the boy who cleaned up after banquets or fixed broken registers. Victoria was destined to lead, they said. I was just the reliable one. I never hated her for it. Not back then. I truly believed we were on the same team. She'd be the face of the future, and I'd be the foundation beneath her feet. I just never imagined she'd use that position to push me into the dirt. When our parents passed and left us joint ownership of the family hotel, it was already teetering on the edge of irrelevance, outdated systems, low staff morale, fading reputation. Victoria took the corner office, posed for the magazines, and talked big about vision and legacy. But I was the one who rolled up my sleeves. I modernized our reservation platform, introduced employee training programs, and personally handled VIP client relationships. Within 2 years, our reviews jumped, bookings doubled, and we landed a partnership with a luxury travel group that kept our suites full year-round. While Victoria networked at charity events, I negotiated contracts, restructured departments, and managed crises no one ever saw. I didn't care that she got the credit, at first. What mattered to me was the work, the progress, the team we built. But slowly, I started to realize something. Victoria wasn't just unaware of what I did. She was actively taking it for granted. As if it all happened by magic. As if I was just another staff member. Disposable. When our longtime CEO stepped down, I assumed I'd at least be in the running. I had the track record, the respect of the staff, and a vision grounded in reality. But the board barely blinked. They handed the title to Victoria like it had been waiting for her all along. I told myself to be gracious. I stood by her at the announcement, shook hands, and smiled for cameras. But inside, something changed. The warmth that used to exist between us, however fragile, was gone. Her emails turned curt. Our strategy meetings became solo performances. She stopped asking for input and started issuing orders. It was clear this wasn't just a new title for her, it was a new dynamic. And I was no longer her partner. I was her subordinate. The look in her eyes said it all. Your usefulness has expired. And yet, I still tried to believe that maybe it was just stress. Maybe we could still work through it. That belief didn't last long. The shift started with silence. I stopped being invited to leadership meetings. Weekly check-ins with department heads that I used to lead were suddenly rescheduled, without me. Reports I had once reviewed were routed past my desk. At first, I thought it was an oversight. I sent polite follow-ups, asked Victoria if something had changed in the workflow. She replied with vague corporate buzzwords, new priorities, streamlined structure, modern hierarchy. None of it meant anything, but the message was clear. I was being shut out. What hurt wasn't just the exclusion, it was the pretense. The careful, deliberate way she tried to make it look procedural. There were no fights, no accusations, no confrontations. Just empty inboxes and quiet doors. I realized that she wasn't planning to work with me, she was planning around me. And everyone else was either too afraid or too loyal to question it. It was the beginning of my erasure. I became the ghost in my own office. Tasks were reassigned, my name quietly removed from key projects. I was suddenly encouraged to take on side initiatives like event planning or spa redesign, work that didn't matter, work that got me out of the way. It was humiliating. I watched junior managers I had trained now report directly to her, bypassing me entirely. I kept showing up early, kept doing what little I was given with precision, hoping she'd realize I was still an asset. But Victoria wasn't looking for assets. She was clearing a path for herself. I could see it in the way she smiled at board members, how she presented my achievements as her own in reports. I didn't fight it then. Part of me still hoped this was temporary, that the sister I'd grown up protecting would remember everything we'd built together. But that hope faded quickly. Because when someone sees you as a threat, even your silence is a weapon they fear. Victoria entered my office like she owned not just the hotel, but me. She didn't knock. She didn't greet me. She simply walked in and sat down across from my desk, her posture sharp, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "We need to talk," she said, and just like that, I knew. There was no curiosity in her eyes, no attempt at empathy or diplomacy, just finality. I had spent my life building this business, keeping it afloat through economic downturns and internal chaos, and now I was about to be discarded like a worn-out ledger. As she talked, her words clipped and rehearsed, I saw the truth. This wasn't about strategy. It was about control. She didn't want me in her way. And it wasn't enough to sideline me, she wanted to erase me completely. That was the moment I stopped trying to justify her actions. I saw her for what she had become, a rival in a sister's skin. She slid the letter across my desk like a contract killer passing the terms of a hit. "We're restructuring," she said, without blinking. "Your role is no longer necessary." My role? The one that had carried this hotel through its most difficult years? The one that had built the systems and trained the managers she now leaned on? My chest tightened, but I didn't let it show. I picked up the letter, skimmed the cold legal language, and set it back down. "I see," I said. That was all. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I looked her in the eye and nodded once. If she expected drama or begging, she left disappointed. The meeting ended in silence. She stood, straightened her blazer, and walked out. And just like that, my nameplate meant nothing. I sat in that chair a moment longer, letting the betrayal settle. She hadn't just fired me. She'd declared war. But she hadn't won, not yet. There's something uniquely cruel about betrayal when it comes from your own blood. Friends can fail you. Colleagues can compete. But when your own sister schemes behind your back, it leaves a scar you can't easily hide. Victoria didn't just dismiss me from a job. She dismissed me from our shared history, from everything we were supposed to build together. I walked through the hotel that day like a ghost, past portraits we had taken together at galas, past staff who couldn't meet my eyes. No one said a word. No one dared. That's the power she held now. The one I had helped her secure. And I realized, this wasn't just professional ambition. This was personal. Somewhere along the line, Victoria had stopped seeing me as a brother and started seeing me as a liability. And the worst part? She believed she had the right. That's what stung most, the quiet certainty in her face when she ended everything we'd built. As I boxed up my things, the office around me fell into an unnatural stillness. The kind that blankets a room when something terrible is happening, and no one knows what to say. Or worse, no one wants to say anything. I passed co-workers I'd mentored, managers I'd promoted, even front desk clerks I'd personally coached through their first nervous weeks. They averted their eyes. A few nodded faintly, more out of obligation than defiance. No one spoke. No one asked why. And I didn't expect them to. Victoria had made it clear, silence was loyalty. Even a sympathetic glance might cost someone their job. That's how power works when fear becomes currency. I didn't hold it against them. Not yet. But it did teach me something. Something crucial. In the world Victoria now ruled, people followed strength, not righteousness. If I wanted justice, I'd need to return not as her brother, or her partner, but as her reckoning. I walked out of the hotel with nothing but a banker's box and 1,000 memories. No goodbye party, no parting words. Just glass doors closing behind me and the sound of my own breath. But I didn't go home to sulk. I went home to plan. Let her think I was finished. Let her believe she'd won. That was her first mistake. In my silence, I started gathering strength. I revisited old contacts, reviewed contracts, analyzed the company's structural weaknesses. Everything I'd once protected, I now examined from the outside. I wasn't seeking revenge for ego's sake. This was about justice, about legacy, and about proving that the foundation I built could just as easily be turned into a lever. Victoria thought she had removed me from the game. But what she didn't realize was that I'd only changed positions. I wasn't out. I was reloading. Victoria had taken the title, the office, and the public spotlight, but she didn't understand the roots. This hotel wasn't just a building to me. It was a system, a living organism, and I knew every artery it ran on. I had built the core infrastructure, our supplier pipelines, the digital reservation network, even the performance metric system that the board used to evaluate success. She thought she could cut me out and still keep the engine running. But she didn't know the nuances. She didn't know how our preferred vendors operated, what our staff needed during seasonal transitions, or why certain partnerships worked only because of long-standing trust one had personally nurtured. She stood at the top of the mountain, unaware that the ground beneath her was laid stone by stone with my hands. And with just a few missing stones, even the sturdiest empire can crack. The moment I stepped back into the business world outside the hotel, I realized something that shifted everything. My network hadn't left me. My phone lit up with messages from former staff, industry partners, even quiet board members. I heard what happened. Many of them said, "Let me know if you ever need anything." It wasn't just sympathy. It was loyalty. These weren't people who admired me for a title. They respected me for the work, the ethics, the way I treated them over the years. While Victoria played for power, I had built relationships. Genuine ones. It was easy to forget that when you're stuck inside the same walls for so long. But outside of her reach, I had influence she couldn't buy. And as the weeks passed, those allies started sharing things with me. Performance concerns, rising tensions, early signs of decline. The house I'd helped build was showing cracks. And this time, I was watching from a distance, with a plan. While Victoria was stripping me of access and erasing my presence, she forgot one crucial detail. I had always backed up everything. Not just financials, but strategy docs, original operating procedures, vendor agreements, and even correspondence with legal and investors. It wasn't out of paranoia. It was how I worked. Organized. Methodical. Smart. I never believed in leaving the company's future to memory alone. And now, that caution was my greatest weapon. I reviewed every document, every timeline, every decision I'd made that she was now leaning on. And then I started highlighting the gaps. The dependencies. The risk points she didn't know were there. I wasn't sabotaging, I was preparing. For every lie she told to the board, I had proof of what actually happened. For every inflated report, I had the original numbers. She had dismissed me as a threat, but I wasn't just her brother. I was the architect. And I still held the blueprints. The first crack in her polished armor came during a high-stakes corporate partnership, a contract I had originally secured with a luxury event brand. Without understanding the personal rapport involved, Victoria mishandled the renewal. She changed terms, cut support, and ignored feedback. The client walked away, publicly. That sent shockwaves through the industry. But worse for her, internally, staff started whispering. Brian would have handled that differently, I heard someone say through one of my contacts. Her decisions weren't just missteps, they were ego-driven. She had stopped listening. And once you stop listening in hospitality, decline becomes inevitable. The hotel wasn't failing yet, but it was wobbling. Staff turnover increased. Customer complaints started stacking. She thought she could control the optics. But you can't PR your way out of a slow bleed. And I was watching, documenting, waiting for the perfect moment, not to destroy her, but to show everyone the truth. Within months, the signs became impossible to ignore. The hotel's TripAdvisor rating dropped for the first time in 5 years. Used to love this place, something's changed, one review said. Housekeeping was short-staffed. The kitchen manager left without notice. Front desk employees I had trained started resigning in quiet waves. Morale dropped to a dangerous low. And Victoria. She was still hosting press events, pretending all was well. But she couldn't fake internal collapse. The systems I once stabilized were starting to fracture under her hands. She blamed the market, the economy, even the guests themselves. But the truth was simpler. She didn't understand what made the hotel thrive. She thought leadership meant standing on the stage. I knew better. It meant knowing when to get your hands dirty. I waited, calmly, as the problems mounted. She was unraveling slowly. And soon, the board would have no choice but to look beyond the press releases. Right at the person they once pushed out. When the call came, I wasn't surprised. A senior board member, one I'd worked with closely for years, reached out discreetly. "Brian, we'd like to hear your perspective, off the record," he said. They had seen the numbers, heard the complaints, and started connecting the dots. What Victoria had covered with charm and curated appearances was now breaking into full view. They knew she was in over her head. And more importantly, they knew who had really built the foundation she was standing on. I agreed to meet, but not to plead. I came with documentation, case studies, original planning frameworks, everything the hotel had once used to thrive. I didn't ask for my job back. I offered them a mirror. And once they looked into it, there was no unseeing what they had ignored. Their golden child was faltering. And the one they'd cast out? He was ready to return, but on his own terms. The meeting was formal but tense. Victoria sat at the end of the boardroom table, her posture stiff, her voice shaky behind rehearsed talking points. I walked in with calm authority. No theatrics, just truth. I laid out every process I had implemented, every number she had inflated, every missed opportunity she had cost the hotel. The board listened, this time, without interruption. When I showed the comparison reports between the last 6 quarters of my leadership versus hers, the shift in the room was palpable. She tried to interrupt, but one of the directors held up a hand. "Let him finish." I finished. Not with malice, but with clarity. I wasn't asking for revenge. I was showing them reality. And when the meeting ended, they didn't look at her. They looked at me. That's when I knew the truth didn't need embellishment. It just needed daylight. Cornered, Victoria turned defensive. She blamed the economy, shifting markets, outdated structures I had supposedly left behind. She even accused staff of disloyalty and hinted that my presence was destabilizing the business. But the board wasn't buying it anymore. They had heard the same song too many times, and the data contradicted her every word. She was no longer the poised figure in control. She was unraveling. And every attempt to redirect the blame only confirmed what they feared. She wasn't just underperforming, she was unfit. Watching her squirm should have satisfied me. But it didn't. I didn't want to see her destroyed. I wanted her to finally face the damage she'd caused. But Victoria wasn't built for accountability. She had spent her whole life being applauded. And when the applause finally stopped, she didn't know what to do with the silence. That was her downfall, not a mistake, but a refusal to admit one had ever been made. It ended not with a blowout, but with a vote. Quiet. Controlled. Devastating. The board held an emergency session the following week. I wasn't in the room when they made the decision, but I didn't have to be. Victoria was removed as CEO effective immediately. No press release. No farewell speech. Just a clean, quiet transition. I was offered her position. I declined. Instead, I agreed to return as an executive advisor, on my terms, with full autonomy to restructure the leadership team. I didn't want her chair. I wanted to restore the legacy our parents left behind. That was never about ego. It was about pride in the work. When I returned to the office that Monday morning, it felt different. Not victorious, just right. Like balance had finally been restored. The staff welcomed me with quiet relief. And the hotel, my hotel, started to breathe again. Victoria left the building just like I had months earlier, carrying a box of personal belongings. But unlike me, she didn't have respect waiting outside. No one lined the hallway. No one looked up. She passed the same portraits, the same walls she once ruled over, and the silence was deafening. I watched from my office window. Not with triumph. Not with rage. With closure. She didn't look back. She didn't wave. And I knew then that she finally understood. Not just what she lost, but why. Power without foundation crumbles. Applause without substance fades. She had been the golden child. But I had been the builder. And now, I was the one still standing. Her story ended in silence. Mine had only just begun. If your own sister betrayed you like this, what would you do? Would you stay silent, or wait for the perfect moment to strike back? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love true revenge stories where justice always finds its way, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching.